social media advertising.
Patience in your community
will cost you $250,000.
Patience not wearing your alignment.
I'm just going to go in and fire somebody today. Communication in your office will be easier.
This is a big stage. Welcome for the last afternoon. So you got to follow a magic act as well as ice cream, carb coma. Oh, all right, we're going to work to keep you awake today. So I have a first question for you. Is there an engineering gene? Is there a gene in our DNA for engineering? I think some of us may have it, and some of us have it turned on a little bit more than others. And I happen to think that mine might be turned on to the nth degree. Because you see, here is a picture of me when I was growing up. And if I may pause, my remote is flash forwarding forward without pushing a button. Hold that thought. Take two. All right. I do not have my prompt on the second screen, though, please. So as they're setting that up, if you see the date on here, and I did not push that button, this is the magic show. Why not? Wow. Well, as you're seeing this slide multiple times, we'll figure this part out. My mom said I used to be a very serious child. And who likes to have, snafu things go on? But when I was 5 years old in this picture, I used to love to build with blocks. And I had this set, the play school blocks with the colored blocks. I always, every single time, built to that design. Because isn't like the picture on the box like the blueprint? My brother, I would be in awe of him because he would build free form. And I would sit there and wonder, is that okay? Are you allowed to do that? So I think my engineering gene was showing a little bit from the very beginning. Well, then come to my 5th grade year when it's time for me to get braces for my Class 2 Div 2 in serious fashion. And I just had to know what was going on. So I would check out every braces book in the library in the kids section. But there was one that used to be my ultimate favorite. I knew exactly where it was. Go in the front door, head to the right, lower bookcase, almost all the way over to the right, and here it is. So You're Getting Braces, my ultimate favorite book. Now, I didn't steal this. eBay is always very helpful. But there were some pictures I used to love to look at. One of them being this. One of them being this. There we go. It's a picture of an orthodontist of those days. I mean, look at that fashion. Tweed pants, paisley shirt, wide tie, and no gloves. OMG, the orthodontist of that day. Or how about this one? In the day where every tooth was banded, you would steel tie every single wire in, and your orthodontist would leave you like a radio antenna until it was time to clip all the wires. But here, as a 5th grader, my favorite picture in the whole book, let me share it with you, was this. I used to sit and study this picture. I'm like, I wonder what that's doing. I wonder what that's doing. I mean, isn't that kind of normal for a 5th grader? Maybe not. Well, this girl went on to attend the United States Military Academy. The year I entered was the 10th year that women were allowed in, one of the first 1,000 women there, where we all work on our engineering degree. I finished my mechanical engineering degree, and I finally did get to do engineering work. So I worked at a consulting firm where I was the stress engineer designing pipe runs for petrochemical piping. I want you to think of braces on a huge scale. 14 to 24-inch pipes, 400 to 500 degrees, there's going to be expansion, people. So you have to build expansion loops. So this is actually the design guide that I wrote back in 1992. You look up what's the temperature, size, and how much movement are you going to have, because you've got to take all that movement into the expansion loops. And later on, I did do some more engineering type work. When I worked for Bank of America, I was there for about 7 years and worked on those cash and check products. You know how your checks are now turned into images that you don't get checks back? That was my area. Or your remote deposit, where you would run those checks in. Yes, worked on there. And worked on other cash products, where I ended up having those 56 patents. But in light of that, even though those are the traditional engineering things, my favorite way to engineer was engineering experiences and curriculum for my 3 kids as I homeschooled them. But here's the thing, you do the same thing. You engineer experiences. You've done a birthday party, you've had dinner guests, so you're engineering those things as well. And here's what we know. You have to know the destination. You have to know what you want that party to look like, what that event to look like. Because when we actually know that destination, then we can look back and realize where we are and how to get there. And in our field, we actually have 2 destinations. Not only do we want the yes, we want a raving fan. And when we keep that in mind, we can then say, if that's our destination, I'm going to back up because I must do this. And I back up because I must do this. And when we do that, we actually pave a path so that we can have a repeatable, positive, and memorable experience. So if there's one thing that you take away from today, it's that the best experiences are the ones that we actually engineer and we design. So we're going to go quickly through 3 areas. We're going to build a foundation, talk about how to build this in your experience in your office, and talk about how to take occupancy. So laying this foundation, I walked through several different studies, but 2 of the ones that I found that were most interesting, if you wish to take a picture of that, is from the 2018 and 2021. So one of these was even post-COVID. And here are a couple statistics that came up over and over again. And it was how important a good customer experience is when deciding a decision. And you know that our patients are looking at option A or B or orthodontist C or D. And 73% of the people say a customer experience is one of the main deciding factors when choosing between options. Another interesting statistic that they had was 65% said that positive experience is more important than great advertising. Yet, here is something that we need to remember. Of those surveyed, 51% of the people are saying we're meeting their expectations for customer service. That's quite a big gap there. So if we work on our customer service and our customer experience, we're not trying to capture that last 1 or 2%. We've got almost half the audience that we can actually impress. So here's what they say is important about a customer experience and what it is. If you encapsulate and boil it all down, they say, make it easy for me, make it personal for me, and make it enjoyable. All that said is, when they pay for something, they want to make sure they're getting more value than what they actually paid for it. Good ROI. And we all do it. Think about it. Sometimes we prefer to go buy our Starbucks instead of making our own coffee at home. There's an experience to it. Or sometimes we want to go have a nice meal instead of the drive-thru at McDonald's or making it at home. And then, many of us probably flew here, there is definitely a different experience of the middle seat compared to the window or the aisle. And you can actually pay to get 6 extra inches of knee room. Because we want to have a better experience, not just the event happen. Because in each of these cases, you got your caffeine, you got your meal, and you arrived at your destination. It's all about the experience. Yet, as we experience these things, sometimes we keep wanting more and more. It's just like Dr. Krieger was saying several times, people would ask him, how are you going to do it better next year? Because we tend to get bored with the same experience. What used to excite us no longer does. You know, back in the day when I was growing up, you had 3 networks and maybe a PBS channel, and now we have hundreds of channels, and yet we still can't be satisfied. We got to keep upping the game. If that's true, and we know it is, when it comes time for us to make changes in our practice and maybe reevaluate what experience we're giving, sometimes we come across this. Well, we do it because it's just the way we've always done it. Now, that's not always a bad thing, because sometimes that social conformity allows us to onboard somebody new into our team and they start assimilating into our way. But sometimes it can catch us up and we can keep repeating poor things. An example of this happened. One time there was a pastor who was at his first service at a new church. And it came time when they were going to stand up and say the Lord's Prayer and the Apostles' Creed. And the entire congregation stood up, turned their back on him, said the creed, turned back around and sat down. I thought, that is the oddest thing, but I'm not going to say anything yet. It happened week after week and week after week, until finally he felt comfortable enough to ask somebody and say, why are we doing that? I go, I don't know, it's just what we've always done. Well, it starts that ripple effect. Why do we do that? I don't know, it's what we've always done. Until you finally get back to, grandma who knew somebody, and it turns out that back in the day, the Lord's Prayer and the Apostles' Creed were printed on a big plaque plastered at the back of the church that no longer existed, but we still keep turning around and saying the Apostles' Creed to the place that no longer exists. And we can do the same thing. If you have any interest in this, they're called Ash conformity experiments about social conformity. Some of them can be really quite funny. Well, let's talk about the customer life cycle, because our patients do go through a life cycle. And this was best captured by Procter & Gamble as they were teaching their sales teams. And it's called moments of truth. They used to start with only 2. Google got their tendrils in it like they get in everybody's business. And then Procter & Gamble added more. So let's quickly go through them for us. This first one is called the stimulus moment of truth. Like the light bulb shows, it's when people become aware. It's when they say, orthodontia might be in my future. And then after that happens, they begin the search, the 0 moment of truth. Yes, this is the Google. This is them asking their friends. This is all the ways that they can find us. And then that turns into this first moment of truth. It's when they make that first contact and the purchase. Now, in our field, orthodontia is a little different. So unlike Procter & Gamble with the Pampers, where you walk into Walmart, you see the Pampers, you buy the Pampers, we're a little different. That first contact of when they reach out to us on the phone until they have the decision point when we say, are you going to accept treatment? Well, it could be the next day. It could be the next week. If they come in at 7, it could be several years away. So I want you to keep in mind that we have a very unique first moment of truth in orthodontia. Well, let's assume the yes. And that's when they then go into this second moment of truth, when they experience us, when they experience what they purchased. And that's everything that's happening, sure, clinically. So our clinical teams are shaping that moment of truth. But there's actually 2 people's experience. Because moms, let's generalize, mom's experience can be quite different than the patient's experience. So keep that in mind. And then we get to this ultimate moment of truth, where hopefully they go back out and share. And so what we have are these things that we can control inside our brick and mortar walls. And that ultimate moment of truth, what we're trying to do is get that to feed the zero moment of truth for the very next person. Because isn't it more believable when somebody else says how great we are than when we say how great we are? So everything we do is trying to build up this perpetual motion machine. Well, within there, we need to create these defining moments. Those moments that we never forget. And so when you look at a book, and every one of you should get this book for your practice, The Power of Moments, the Heath brothers talk about 3 things to help create and engineer these defining moments. And they say we need to build some peaks, some highlights. We need to fill those pits of when things go wrong. And we need to commemorate these transitions, these natural transitions that happen. Let me illustrate what this could look like from story. So building some peaks. So 8 years ago, my sweetheart and I, we finally were able to get married after we had dated 4 years. And so I had a long time to plan for this. And I wanted to make sure that everything had meaning behind it. I was trying to build these memorable peaks. So some of the things I did were this. As my sons brought the mothers in, the song Is There Redemption was sung. Because my mom had experienced a daughter going through a very rough time, and Eldred had experienced Don being widowed. So is there redemption? And then the kids walk in, the daughters walk in. Great is thy faithfulness, a song that the kids and I had memorized during homeschooling, so it would ring in their minds, and it was a prayer that we would have over our kids. But then it was my turn to walk in. And I walked in alone because my father had already passed away with cancer. And I walked in and I had my friend, she sang Broken into Beautiful. And halfway down, Don left the front, met me halfway, and together we walked down. And we needed to commemorate those who were in our life, creating these peaks and moments for them. First, to my life coach who introduced us, because he lived in Connecticut and I in North Carolina. Back over to Eldred and Norman, who are actually Don's in-laws. Don's parents had already passed away, and it was his in-laws that helped Don when he had a 16-year-old and a 4-year-old newly widowed with a new practice that helped him out. Back over to my mom, gave birth to me and rescued me from a tough situation. So the hearts are beating, and the memories are flashing back. But I wanted to give a double peek. I wanted to give a nod to our 5 kids. So I planned this strategically, and I said to the photographer, be ready, I want you to capture it. So up comes my pastor as we're here. Marriage is what brings us together today. Princess Bride, the kids' favorite movie, a nod to them, and the giggles and the laughter rippled throughout, and you create that double peak that just was like, oh my goodness, I will never forget that moment. So we can engineer those peaks. Well, now let's talk about filling pits, because you know mayhem happens. Allstate's got that one right. And if we don't plan for it, sometimes we create our own as the consumer, and sometimes the provider has the pit that they create. And we've got to plan for these, because if not, we're going to be reading that 1-star review, Google review, over our coffee. So here's one that I created for myself. I always leave my bags packed, and I had a trip that I was going to do a fast turnaround time. I was able to get a late direct flight, no problem. So grab my bags, off I head for my hour drive to the airport. Minding my own business, I get on that last turnoff, and I have a flash of insight. My wallet. What am I going to do? Fear not, though. I am a fan of This Is Us, And 6 weeks before this happened in April, do you remember the Kevin Pearson story when he showed up at TSA without his ID? Oh yeah, he made it to the birth of his twins, so I knew it was possible, because if it says on This Is Us, it's reality. So with that knowledge in hand and my phone at the ready, I Google it, and it does say it is possible. So if not, there's your pearl for this weekend. It is possible to get through TSA without an ID, but make sure you arrive 2 hours ahead of time. I had only allowed 45 minutes. Well, I did make it. I got to the gate, to the Spirit gate, right as they were boarding. I'm like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. We get on. We wait. We reboot the computer. We wait. We reboot the plane. We wait. We back out. We're going. We head back. We deplane. What am I going to do? I can't book another flight. I have no wallet, no ID. 3 hours later, I could have gotten home with my ID, but that's beside the point. We get on the plane, and the airline attendant says, "Oh my goodness, what a day this has been." And I say, "Oh yeah, really? Let me tell you about it." But you know what? Spirit charges for water and everything. But as that woman and that attendant walked by my aisle later on, she said, "Here you go. Here's some water and M&Ms." She filled my pit that I had created for myself. And before we even landed, I walk by the cabin and thank her. She opens the drawer and says, "Do you need something else?" She filled my pit. Well, sometimes the pit's created by the provider. Funny thing happened one day, 6 years ago, when I was trying to finish another chemotherapy round. And it was November, Thursday, the 12th. You would have thought it was Friday the 13th. First of all, and I was texting this to my husband, I say, well, first of all, the EMTs arrived because somebody had a reaction and they needed to whisk somebody off to the hospital, the main hospital. A couple hours later, this is a picture of the 2 firemen. I'm trying to take a picture over the nurse's desk. They have oxygen tanks on, 4 firemen with oxygen tanks, full gear, axes in hand. Where's the fire? I don't think any of us are really causing too much ruckus here in the infusion center. And I'm like, oh my goodness, what else could happen? I spoke too soon. Oh, I was laying there and I went to sit up, and one of those IV clips must have gotten loose, because I looked down and I say, oh, my pants are wet. Oh my goodness, you would have thought I had rung the fire alarm. Everyone comes running, they whisk me away. I go from having pants to no pants. They take them, they triple bag them, and they say, no, we're going to burn these. You have nothing to wear. I was like, it's November in Connecticut. What are we going to do? The nurse says, here, put these on. I'm like, she says they're large. I don't think so. These have probably been washed at 500 degrees 500 times. She says, try them on. They're not going. I said, what else can we do? She's like this, how about a hospital gown? Really? All right, I'm going to tie it around like a wraparound skirt. I've got half of me showing. Here's another skirt. Oh my goodness, I go home with 2 hospital gowns. I look like a vagabond. But you know what? Even though they didn't really have a solution, they had already built relationship with me. So they weathered that oops moment. Very important to remember. So we've built peaks and we're filling pits. We need to talk about transitions. So this is my Lucy. At 12 years old in August, she turned 12, and so she gets 2 puppuccinos, right? Well, just last month, we had to say goodbye to her. Oh my goodness. And some transitions are hard and some are beautiful. But that hospital, they did everything right. Give us a private room, take care of everything so we can walk out quietly, wrapped her up. But you know the next thing they did? 3 days later, my vet and that hospital sent us a handwritten note. So when we build peaks, we fill those pits and we commemorate those transactions. You have to remember, People aren't going to remember the things you do and say, but they will always remember the way you make them feel. So that's what we're going for. So how in the world are we actually going to do this? We're going to construct this experience. So going back to that moments of truth, we're going to isolate this first, second, and ultimate moment of truth. Think of them as a beginning, a during, and a finish, and a completion. Go. First moment of truth, beginnings. In the beginning, there is a phone call and money's on the line. $5,000 or $6,000 is easily on the line. So what kind of call are we having? Well, we have to remember their thoughts in this moment. What they're thinking, even if they don't know how to express it, is hear me, see me, welcome me. And if that's what they're thinking, then why are we interrogating our patients and callers? Now, I listen to over 15,000 calls a year, and most people, it sounds like an interrogation. And I want you to think about it, instead of being first date-like when you're cautious about what you give and take, if you're asking 100 questions, do you think there's going to be a second date, or is somebody going to ghost you? So could it be our lack of finesse? So one of the biggest challenges is when we take these calls on the computer, because we get these stilted flows, untold stories, and connectivity issues. Stilted flows, you're on the computer, name, address, zip code, age. They may ask a question. No, that's screen 20. Hold on. And we hold them hostage for minutes and minutes and minutes upon end, and then it's like, and if you behave and you answer every one of my questions, then I will give you an appointment, maybe. And then we might then all of a sudden lay down the heavy, tell. That's not the way natural conversation is. And then the untold stories. If you're on the computer, a data field cannot hold story. So you need to be writing that down. And then connectivity. I don't care what you do. The distance of a computer screen, even though they become thin screens, we lose them. You hear tap, 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 tap. Or we're trying to find the write-down, drop-down menu. Is that dentist's name R. Miller? T. Miller? And you're like, just take the name down. We'll find out later. Or worst case, we've gone through this agonizing process, and we get all the way to the end, and they go, save. Oh, I'm sorry. That didn't save. What's your name again? Oh, and this is not an uncommon event. I hear it way too often. So get onto paper, but let's also find a strategy. And it's this, 3 tips. Let's de-chunk that structure so it's not only a series of question and answers. Let's use some benefit statements and some open-ended questions. Here's what it's going to look like. We're going to have a balanced new patient call. What I think of it is, these are the 5 sections, 5 buckets, if you will. And I want you to think of the fulcrum point as that balancing point is actually give them the appointment. That's what they called for. Please do it. So you're going to welcome them in the discovery, in the introduction. You're going to discover and ask a couple questions. Then you're going to tell them what to expect when they come in and actually make the appointment. And then in the assist, we're going to get a few more pieces of information. So we're going to break up the questions, and then we're going to close. That's de-chunking. Benefit statements. Let me define it first. A benefit statement is when we ask for something, we're giving them a reason why we're asking. Then it feels less of taking information and exchanging information. The 3 I love to think of: phone number, email, and if you take insurance information. Because think about it. These are the 3 things that can be abused. With your phone number, I can bug you all day. With your email, I can spam you. And with your insurance information, I could do ID theft. There's enough private information there. And when you align them to the structure, you've got 1 at the beginning, 1 in the middle, and 1 in the end. Again, we're staying balanced. It would look something like this for an email. I've just made the appointment, and I say, Mrs. Jones, I'd love to send you the appointment details via email. What would be the best email? And then it's like, Oh yeah, you have to have it, right? So that you can do that favor for me. That's what a benefit statement does. It helps conversationalize it. Finally, 2 open-ended questions. Again, balanced on this seesaw. Many of us are really good at opening open-ended question. And an open-ended question is one that can't be answered with yes or no or with a one-word answer. For example, a closed-ended question is, what's your name? Amy. There's no other answer to that one. But an open-ended question is an invitation to speak. It's holding a space for them so they can talk to us. And many of us at the beginning may ask, and what led you to give us a call today? Or what do you hope to accomplish with treatment? They may or may not take you up on it, but some will talk and talk and talk. And they may sometimes answer 4 or 5 questions with you just asking one. That's good return on investment. But I want you to think of one at the other end. And this is one that tends to get missed. As we're wrapping up that call, as we're nearing the end, you could ask something such as this. Mrs. Jones, are there any other questions for me? Or is there anything else we can do to help Johnny's visit be more comfortable? Oh, you'd be surprised what we can hear. That's when a mom of a special needs child will bubble that up. Because we don't want to ask the question, does your child have special needs? But if we give them space, they may bubble it up. Or I've heard such things as, oh, Johnny's going to be fine. He's actually done this before. You're like, oh, second opinion. Yeah, we uncovered it without asking it directly. And even if they don't take us up on it, you can sense on the phone that they go, no, I'm good, but thanks for asking. So all these 3 strategies help our new patient call to be memorable. So when they're calling 3 or 4 places, we've built a peak experience on that new patient call. Because here's a definition of success. And I don't know if my Jan is in here, but someone from Low Orthodontics, when she started doing this, she said, when I get off the phone, I feel like I have a friend coming in. That's what I want it to feel like. As opposed to the proverbial clipboard. I know I asked you 100 questions. I wrote it all down. I don't believe you. Here, electronically or physically, is the clipboard and answer them all over again. Is that just not annoying when you go to the doctor? So move away from that. That was the beginnings. How about the middle? The during, the middle. We all have to be working together in order to get this treatment done. We need them coming in for appointments, and we need them cooperating with our treatment. Here's what they're thinking. Guide me. Help me. Coach me. How do we do this? Well, it's not by being like Mr. Bean. Have any of you watched Mr. Bean? He's like the proverbial 8-year-old. I don't take any responsibility. It's their fault. We don't want to have that approach to our patients in their treatment. Instead, I want you to channel your Caesar Milan, the dog whisperer. He has couple really profound things he says that are perfect for us because it is all about our energy and the posture we take with our patients. He actually says this, it's that calm, assertive energy, showing you're the pack leader. Now, I'm not saying your patients are dogs, but maybe it would be easier. But I want you to think you are that leader as you're guiding them. And assertive doesn't mean ugly. It's that calm, quietly in control. Caesar also says this, if you're going to lead them 80% of the time, they'll follow it. But that last 20%, they will run all over you. Keep that in mind because what I need you to do is to be the guide. As you're setting these appointments, as you're getting this treatment compliance, and as we resolve some of those oops. So setting appointments, I want you to remember time are facts. So as we look at these areas, one, how to offer appointments, and a couple of snarly areas, those last-minute reschedules when everybody's in school, or those long appointments, not so fun to schedule. Time are facts, and my goal is to help you get the icky out of your belly. Because once you make the appointment and somebody says, what time is my appointment? Your appointment's at 2 o'clock. It's a fact, 2 o'clock, not 2 o'clock. It's all in how we posture ourselves and we offer those appointments. So the two-option technique. I see Dr. Smile has recommended us to be back in 6 weeks. The first availability is Monday at 10 or Tuesday at 2. Which works best for you? Two options. You're using a leading question. You're being like what Judge Judy would say, you're leading the witness. Yes, you are. You're leading them to these two options. You say which one is best for you, not do either of these work? Because that's like two, I've got 100 more. You know, which one? Two-option technique. If it's a wide open schedule, just a little tidbit, it's 6 weeks out, everything's wide open. I have availability as early as 8, as late as noon, with options in between. That's still a way of narrowing the options down to 2. So keep to the 2 options. Next, those last-minute reschedules. Oh, and this year, I'm listening to calls, and it is, kids back in school when they haven't been, nobody wants to take kids out of school. So they're wanting to reschedule. You know, can I just get another 4:30? No, I define a last-minute reschedule. If you're on an 8-week rotation, anybody who's halfway through. So anybody who needs to schedule within the next month, whether they're changing it or whether they forgot to set the appointment and they're calling in because they finally remembered they're due. Here's what I want you to do from the very first thing is you're guiding. I would be happy to help you. What I'll be doing is looking for the first availability to help keep you on track. Now when you offer it, you're not just being ugly, you're trying to help keep them on track. Now, some may say, oh no, I want that 4:30. I'd be happy to look for you. What that's going to do is push us out another 4 weeks since we're in the middle of our rotation. I'd be happy to look for that time, increasing treatment time. Or would you prefer for me to look at what the doctor has prescribed? Ooh, power word. Which do you prefer? Which one? I'm taking the icky out of it. And if they choose the 4 weeks out, note it on the treatment chart. Mom, I advise mom of 4:30 adds 4 weeks of time. Because you know when that 24-month calendar alarm starts beeping, because you know they said it from the day go, doctors and clinicians can then look back at the notes and say, Mrs. Jones, I see that 4:30 time was really important to you. We did that 3 or 4 times, adding 4 weeks on each time. We're actually ahead of schedule. It gives you that empowerment. So last minute reschedule, I'd be happy to look for you. What I'll be doing is looking for the first availability to help keep you on track. Then we get our long appointments. We've all got to be singing the same song, not just always the same parts. So treatment coordinators, I know you've mentioned it. You've mentioned that sometimes there's long appointments that are going to be in the middle of the day, but it's TMI and they have a short memory span and they have forgotten. So when you're at your visit and the next visit's going to be a long appointment, each of our roles has something different to say. Don't leave it for the scheduling coordinator to be the first one to say it's a daytime. So doctors, and if I don't have doctors in here, you team members, it's very short and sweet. I think they can remember it. Doctors, you come in at the end of that visit. Johnny, good news. We've hit a milestone. Next appointment's going to be a long one. That's all you've got to say. I think you can handle it, right? Next one's going to be a long one. Clinicians, build on it. Johnny, our scheduling coordinator will be helping you make that long appointment that'll be in the morning. You just added one more piece of information. So by the time we come up to the front desk, it's now a matter of which day it is, not that it's a fact of a long appointment, morning. Does the doctor know about that? Yeah, he does. So cue it up. Cue it up so that you can all be in sync and you can help each other out with that piece of information. Well, treatment compliance. So that's in setting the appointments. How do we get this compliance when we're in treatment? You know, it's like that dog and leader relationship. You've got to have relationship and you've got to have some confirmation. And this is how we do it. Especially my clinicians, when you sit down, you've got to have that relationship. Remember how that awful thing in chemo happened to me, but because there was relationship, we weathered it. So how you build relationship, remember the FORD acronym, family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. Now for kids, their occupation is student. What do you like in school? What are you studying? Use open-ended questions, not how's school? Fine. Yeah. What's your favorite subject in school? That would be more open-ended. Their recreation is maybe their clubs or their after-school activities or sports. And their dreams, maybe, what do you want for Christmas? What vacation would you like to do? My goal for you is when you sit down with your patient, ask 2 out of 4 of these. Just 2. Ask 2 every time you sit down. The other thing for that compliance and that check-in, that confirmation, 3 C's. And it's going to be when you first sit down with them, as you're wrapping up, and that confirmation promise. So you're first going to check in. Johnny, I'm going to be checking your oral hygiene. I'm going to make a note of where I think you are on a scale of 1 to 5, or 1 to 10, or A, B, C, whatever you use. I'm going to write it down first. How do you think you did? If he agrees with you or she agrees with you, yep, I would agree that was probably a B because I'm noticing food on the teeth or whatever the case may be. If he says he's got an A and you're like, that's more of a C, educate. I would have thought that was a C because I'm noticing some buildup around your brackets. So there's your check. As you clarify and finish up, what the doctor did is we put the expander in. We're going to be making turns. You may notice a gap open up. Use non-orthodontic terms. What it may be is teeth are going to move at different rate, kind of like when we're at a stop sign and a stop light and the light turns green, not all the cars move at once. The first car is going to move, then the second car, then the third car. That may happen with your teeth, and you may notice some gaps, but don't worry, we're going to close them up. So clarify if something's going to happen. It's so obvious to you, but not to them. And many moms call in a panic. Oh my goodness, the gap's bigger than when you ever started. What's going on? Help educate. And then at the end, have them commit to small promises. Because once we commit to a small promise, we're much more likely, the psychology of influence says, to follow through. So Johnny, the doctor has finished their component. He's asked us to wear rubber bands, elastics, X number of days. Will you do that for me? Ask for that. Don't just say, we need you to. That's a suggestion. Ask for that small little promise instead, that commitment. Well, sometimes when we're in treatment, we have our oops. And I want you to think of ways to resolve those oops. Have a triage chart so that when they call in the front desk, maybe if they just have braces on within the first 2 weeks, we do this. If they're halfway through their cycle, we do this. If it's a wire poke, we do this. Because I want us to get that first call resolution, the front desk being able to resolve it instead of, hold on a minute, let me go ask. And you disappear for 10 minutes trying to find the doctor or the clinician trying to resolve it. Because if we do this well, we really can create some wow moments. 25% of positive encounters actually came from service recoveries. Because as we take them through that experience, it tends to be more memorable. So here's the definition of success in the middle of treatment. We're cooperating, we're being successful. And the failure version of it is, oh my goodness, they're exhausted, we're exhausted. So let's think about the last one, great endings. How do we get those great endings? You've got to remember that our D-bands are a natural one, but we could actually build in many, many ones because what they are remembering is and thinking is celebrate me, remember me, make it safe for me. So as we build these many, many milestones, try saying that several times, we help them have more successes along the way. You've got to remember for a child, 2 years is a long time of their life. So break it up. Maybe when they have finished their elastic completion, maybe there's a little reward. There a little celebration. Or repo day. When you're repositioning brackets and it's going to be a long appointment. Maybe as they make that appointment, we give them mom a $5 gift card to go get coffee for that long appointment. Maybe it would make it a little easier to schedule that appointment. Or when there's additional bondings because maybe a tooth erupted or something's happened. They're milestones, so celebrate those many, many milestones or their treatmentversary. And then their graduation day. Many times you do this so well. We have, we celebrate, we have our reveals, but don't forget about your before and after photos. So Rita Bauer, that great photographer, she also has that marketing bent. She says use those after photos, build a little certificate that has their little kids 2 years ago cute photo and their ending photo, that glamour photo. Oh my goodness, email it and print it up and send it to them. It'll be in their scrapbook. And that's the time to ask for those reviews. Definition of success here is we are all cheering each other on and making it safe if we ever needed to return because we didn't wear our retainers. And the definition of failure in this is we're being like a bouncer. Out the door, you leave. You come back only when you're ready to pay some more. We don't want that to be the feel. So how do we take ownership of these type of things? You've got to live them out. But I want you to be aware of overload. Like when our CPU gets overloaded, we're busy. August is maybe not a good time to try to do this because if we get overly busy, we fritz out and we're like, eep, eep. So take these one at a time. I'd rather you do one thing, master it, then move on to the other thing. So think about what we did today. Pick one. Maybe you're picking one of the moments of truth. A good call. How do we schedule? How do we celebrate, maybe at the end? Or maybe we pick how to make a memory by building a peak, filling one of those pits, or commemorating one of those transitions. So I bring it all the way back around to that first question I asked you. Is there an engineering gene? And I would have to say, yeah, there is an engineering gene. Because you can plan to make great experiences. So go out and make sure you engineer them because there's going to be experiences along the way, but let's go ahead and make them great instead. If you wish to learn more, please feel free. You can get my first chapter of my book downloaded for free with the QR code. And I hope you have a wonderful and excellent rest of your meeting.